Hey, I've been here a while. I'm probably older than you. I don't know, but I'm old enough to have marched with Martin Luther King, and after 45 years, this is just the worst I've ever seen this country, and I don't know what to do. I want to do something, and I've been a political activist since I was 12 or 14.
Sure.
And I just feel that everything is useless now.
Liz, this too shall pass. You know, Thomas Jefferson. Maybe Jacob could track it down for me and get it. Just Google Thomas Jefferson and what was the word that he used? It wasn't the witches. Thomas Jefferson and the time of witches. And basically what he was talking about was the John Adams presidency. In fact, I wrote an op-ed about it for Common Dreams years ago. If Jacob plugged Thomas Jefferson, witches, Tom Hartmann into Google, I'll bet it would pop right up, and I would love to share that quote with you. But here's the context of the quote, and that was that Jefferson was vice president, because back then, whoever got the most votes became president, the second most votes became vice president. And so
Correct.
John Adams was the president, second president of the United States, and Thomas Jefferson was the vice president. And by this point in time, these guys were not talking to each other. They did not like each other at all, because their politics were so different. John Adams was not a religious fundamentalist, but a fundamentalist conservative. He had ordered that whenever he and his wife Abigail came through a town, that the cannons, the local militia, had to come out and fire guns in the air, and everybody had to save God, had to shout, "God save President Adams and his wife." He passed in 1898. He passed the Alien and Sedition laws that made it a crime for newspaper editors to write anything about John Adams that was negative. And he put Ben Franklin's grandson, Benjamin Franklin Bach, who published a newspaper called the Aurora in Massachusetts, put him in prison. In fact, the day that he signed the legislation, and he was stuck there for 2 years. The kid lost his paper. He put over 20 newspaper publishers in prison. Matthew Lyon, the congressman from Vermont, called him out on the floor of the House. Roger Griswold, the Federalist, today's Republicans from Connecticut, came over and started beating him up with a poker from the fire. And so John Adams had Matthew Lyon arrested and stuck on a horse and from Washington D.C. up to Vermont, and they put him in an unheated jail cell in Vergennes, Vermont, for 2 years for the crime of sedition of speaking. And what he said on the floor of the House, by the way, what Matthew Lyon said was that Griswold and Adams were looking out for the interests of the well-born and the well-bred rather than the average yeoman, the average working person. That was his crime. Yeah. And so, Jefferson was like looking at this and just in despair. I mean, he was watching his country turn into a nation of fear and loathing. The XYZ affair, this happened the same year, 1898, as I recall. And this was where John Adams had sent John Marshall, actually, the guy who would ultimately become the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and two others over to France to negotiate. And I have the quote here. I'll have to. Here's the quote. "A little patience," Jefferson said, "and we shall see the reign of witches pass over. Their spell dissolved, and the people recovering their true sight, restoring their government to its true principles. It is true that in the meantime we are suffering deeply in spirit and incurring the horrors of a war and long oppressions of enormous public debt. If the game runs against us sometimes at home, we must have patience till luck turns, and then we shall have an opportunity for winning back the principles we have lost. For this is a game where principles are the stake." Not at stake, the stake. And so, with all the stories that I told you to provide the context for that quote, I mean, he was just in this horrible position. The XYZ affair, Adams had sent these guys over. Somebody, some local criminals tried to bribe them. John Adams almost started a war with France over it. He used it as an issue in the election of 1800, just the same way George Bush did in 2004, the whole, Osama bin Laden thing. That's what Jefferson was talking about. And we shall see the reign, now, witches was a negative term back then. I don't think it necessarily should be now, but you get the point. And so it's like, we have, I guarantee you, Liz, there were times when Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who didn't live to see women vote, felt that, why are we doing this? There had to be times when Martin Luther King, who didn't live to see the ultimate outcome of his own works, had to think, why am I doing this? But it will come. I have great faith in this country and in our people, and we just need to keep fighting.
I mean, that's it. That's how I feel. I don't know if it's going to last. If this country is going to.
It must, Liz. It must. We're out of time. Thank you.